I knew nothing about being a speaker at a conference, and it was just that there were many other people who would have helped, but having someone who just tells you everything, shows you everything, and when you get a little bit too excited, takes your hand, calms you down. I was nervous the day before, and I said, "Can we talk it through again?" Yeah, it was just really nice to have someone help you.
Welcome to Power Platform Connections, where we highlight the amazing community contributors like you in every episode and talk about the amazing blogs, articles, videos, and contributions you've made over the last couple of weeks. My name is David Warner, Community Program Manager for Microsoft, and with me, my co-host.
Hi, I'm Hugo Bernier, and we have two guests this week. The first guest is whatever nasty virus David brought back from Dublin, but that's not who we're going to be interviewing today. The second one is not nasty at all. In fact, he's a nice person. He's an MVP. He's a Power Platform advocate, and we're honored to have him. Our guest is Robin Rosengrün.
Hugo, that was perfect. That was
Thank you.
perfect pronunciation of my last name. Thank you very much
All
for
right, let's
putting in
stop
the
everything
extra
here
effort.
because I'll mess it up from now on.
That's right. Show's over. Thanks for joining, everybody.
We just
All
go
right.
by first name from now on. Hey, everyone.
Hey, Robin. So
Welcome.
why don't you take a minute? Thank you for joining us today. Take a minute and introduce yourself to the community.
Yeah, you told nearly everything, David. My name is Robin. As you may hear from my accent, it may give it away. I'm from southern Germany, live near Stuttgart there, and I work at a company called EnBW, and we are in the energy sector, and yeah, doing anything from distributing the energy like natural gas or electricity, and selling the energy to customers, and much more like charging infrastructure and so on.
Cool. Now, Robin and I got to hang out a little bit together last week. Hugo mentioned I was in Dublin for the EPPC, or European Power Platform Conference. So you did a full day workshop there. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But first, of course, we always like to cover some of the personal stuff that you put in for the community to have an opportunity to get to know you a little bit more. So it's fun. I always love the movie references. And one of your favorite movies was Talladega Nights. So Will Ferrell playing a race car driver. Tell us a little bit about what you love so much.
Like a few years ago, that was our go-to movie when it was getting late. I leave it there, and then we had a movie to watch, and we just watched Talladega Nights. Just the right kind of stupidity we needed back then, and yeah, quoting so much stuff. I can't quote it in English because we were watching it in German all the time, but yeah. Probably I would cringe a little bit watching the movie today again, but it's such great memories with lots of my friends.
That's cool. Yeah, it is one of those quote worthy because it is so stupid, so made up and so far fetched that you think no one could actually do that in real life. But Will Ferrell is one of the best. Now, one of the things you also said for your dream car, which is unique, and I'd love to dive into this, is you said what your dream car is a high-speed train that is actually on time. So does some of that come from your trains not being on time? And then tell us a little bit more.
Yeah, well, that's the German joke that our trains are never on time, actually. But yeah, I'm not that into cars at all. I don't have a personal connection with cars, which is strange living in southern Germany, and especially Sindelfingen, where I live, is where the biggest Mercedes plant is, where all the E-Class, S-Class get produced. And I'm probably the only one in the whole city not working for them, and was the only one studying nothing to do with cars, but going into the energy sector. But I drive a electric car, Ioniq 5, and yeah, it's quite fun. Going pedal to the metal at the traffic light, but it gets old really fast. So I have no connection with cars at all. And sitting in a train, relaxing on my laptop or just sleeping is just so much nicer for traveling from A to B. And imagine a world without cars standing around everywhere. That would be so great.
Yeah, I took a train for 7 years actually in downtown Los Angeles. Now we were talking pre-show, everybody, a little bit about trains and Back to the Future, right? He said train. I instantly go back to that Back to the Future where they've got the time travel time machine
in the third part, right? They had this
yeah,
cool
exactly.
train, yeah.
Part 3, yeah. So would you want that train as well?
That train, yeah, would probably go back to Dublin and relive that week again. You just talked about.
Kind of guarantees that it's on time because it can time travel,
Yeah,
right? There's no like risk
you're
there.
never late.
Exactly.
If you
All
hit
right.
88 miles, you're never late. Yeah.
That's right. Great, Scott. All right, cool. And then I think the one other thing that you do we liked was that you go mountain biking in the woods to kind of give yourself a free or a way to relax after work and stuff like that. What is some of the things that you love about doing that?
Well, I love the mountains themselves. So in southern Germany, from where I live, you have only 1.5 hours driving south, and then you see the mountains appear in the distance, and it's Hugo. You told me you lived in Munich. That's such a great feeling going there and seeing that, and then in the mountains. I prefer mountains over sea or lakes. So that's just my thing, and actually I have trailheads starting 5 minutes from where I live, so I'm really quick, so I can go mountain biking for just an hour after work, and that's so nice. It's not the biggest trails, but in my local woods, and yeah, it's just such a nice hobby.
That's amazing.
Yeah, there's something a little majestic and inspiring about mountain ranges, right? I lived in Texas for 7 years where there's like zero mountain range. It's flat. And I grew up in Southern California. We have lots of mountains, and I didn't realize how much I missed them until I moved back. And you enjoy just the perspective of them. So I agree 100%. We'll go hiking in them all the time because we're right near them. So very, very cool. Now, you had mentioned EPPC, or European Power Platform Conference. Was that your first workshop that you had ever done while you were there?
That was my first Power Platform live event for the community. I did lots of online events during COVID. I wasn't around in the Power Platform community before COVID, so there were no live events ever for me. I went last year, but not as a speaker, and this year speaker for a session and a whole day workshop. Um, I got the new hashtag Louise made me do it. My amazing co-speaker she has so much experience, took me under her wings, and yeah, gave me a smooth ride through all the difficult stuff associated with that. So it was a really cool experience, especially doing both, but having someone with me knows the ins and out of public speaking really helped to get it done.
And I don't know about you, but I certainly I love doing the workshops, but at the end of the workshops, I'm completely exhausted. Just I mean excited, but exhausted at the same time.
That was the cool thing, that we were two people and then we could take turns. Of course, it was a longer day, but taking turns, half an hour. Louise talked, then I talked, and we talked to each other. So it wasn't that stiff and wasn't a monologue, and we had a cool audience who actually participated in the workshop. So time flew by, and we had a little more prepared, so we could have continued for 1 or 2 hours, but day was already long enough, so everything went perfect, I'd say.
That's amazing. And what did we talk about the topic of your workshop?
Yeah, it was basically a Power Apps, Canvas Apps UI masterclass. Title was a little bit different because we are both passionate about good design in Power Apps, Canvas Apps. And there's so much you can do wrong, but there's so many easy fixes you can get better at it. So yeah, we really wanted to give our participants a head start in that, and got them to build nicer, better, more accessible Canvas apps.
Accessible is a keyword. I know you and I and Louisa and Donna Sakar were talking about that in the evening at one of the events, and I know Hugo. I know we only have a certain amount of time, but so we don't want to open up that box of accessibility. But so you'd mentioned that also you co-presented obviously with her in the workshop. Hugo and I are huge fans of doing that. We co-present a ton together. Tell us a little bit more about how much you like you said, you were taken under her wing, but how much you enjoyed being in a co-presenting situation.
Well, it's from I knew nothing about being a speaker at a conference, and it was just that there were many other people who would have helped, but having someone who just tells you everything, shows you everything. And when you get a little bit too excited, takes your hand, calms you down. So when I was nervous the day before, and I said, can we talk it through again? And then, yeah, we talked it through, changed exactly nothing. And she was just like, feeling better now. Let's grab a beer, and we will rock that tomorrow. And we did that. So yeah, it was just really nice to have someone help you.
And I think it's important to remember when you're presenting, especially when you're co-presenting. First of all, if you forget about something, you forget to say something, the audience doesn't know that what you meant to talk about or what you didn't mean to talk about. They only see one version, which is the version that you gave, right? So it's not like they're going to be like, "Hey, I was robbed of
Comparing
that
it.
section." Yeah.
Yeah.
But the other thing too is your co-speaker, your co-presenter. If you're fumbling on your words, like I was just doing, you're able to rely on your co-presenter. They'll be able to to prompt you, to take over if you're completely stuck. So really, it removes that whole stress, especially for one of your first sessions. So congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Now let's talk about how you got started in the Power Platform.
Well, that was, I think, about 5 years ago when we migrated to Microsoft 365. And yeah, a coworker just came to me and said, hey, there's this new cool tool called Power Apps. You should definitely try it out. I had some, I didn't create, but I was responsible for some Access databases. And I always knew there had to be a better way to do this, especially after the migration Access files you put on SharePoint crashed all the time. So we needed better ways to do this and to put everything in the cloud. And then I opened Power Apps, understood nothing. 50 minutes later, I resigned, closed it down, and asked myself what this tool is. I completely didn't understand it. And it was about a month later, I opened it up again, gave it a second try, and from then on, I fell in love with the tool. And yeah, just that's where the story started. Yeah.
And do you mind talking about what was the moment where it clicked in for you, where I don't know how to explain. When you see the matrix, right?
Yeah, on that
The
on that
lights
second
all went on, and yeah.
on that second revisit, I saw the green letters falling down. So I just didn't knew why I didn't get it at the first time. On the second time, I thought I did get it, but looking back to my first apps, I didn't get it at the beginning. But that was where I understood that it's a really useful, powerful tool I will work with in the future.
And by the way, there is a tool to help you migrate from Access to Dataverse. For those of you who have a lot of investments made in Access, you can migrate your database to Dataverse, and then you can keep your apps, your existing Access apps connected, but they're now connected to Dataverse. But of course, now your data is in Dataverse, so you can start connecting. You can start replacing gradually your apps to Canvas apps, or my favorite, model-driven apps.
Yeah, we were not talking about Dataverse 5 years back.
Yeah, no.
I won't continue from there on.
Yeah,
we all know where this is heading. Yeah.
That's right. It's like
And
the
if you
religious
sign up
war.
now, yeah. Now, you said this was your first in-person EPPC was your first in-person event conference for speaking, and you saw some other people there. So you had mentioned that seeing a lot of other folks like Scott Duro and stuff like that was kind of a special moment and stuff like that. Being able to sync up with some folks like that in the community, from an attendance perspective, even though you were speaking, if you weren't speaking, like we've got MPPC coming up in October in Vegas. Any suggestions or advice you have for the community and how to just enjoy it? We have so many that are going to come.
Yeah, just like I said, when I started out, I started out with SharePoint, and it's just you didn't know what is possible in the Power Platform. And I can say this from a perspective because last year I was in Berlin, and I wasn't a speaker, so I had full focus on attending most of the sessions, and there was just so much new stuff I soaked in. So just go into the sessions that may sound interesting. You won't be able to try everything out you learn there, but get some key takeaways, make a list what you want to try. My list had about 10 points, and then just tackle them one after the other. Probably you just tackle the first 3, but you will take something home, definitely, and you will be curious. I was bursting on my train ride back home last year in Berlin, and wanted to try new things. So yeah, but just organize yourself a little bit, and then work yourself through.
Yeah, and even just enjoying the moment, right? Like enjoying the time that you get to spend with others in those hallway conversations, the meal conversations,
Yeah,
and stuff
sure,
like
that
that.
as well. And the evenings as well. So
Yeah.
last year
And
and this year.
Yeah, and you got to hang out with some of my favorite people. You were hanging out with Louisa Fries and Donna Sakar, and talking about some of my favorite topics.
Yeah, I touched Scott Duro, already feel smarter after that. So yeah, it's and many others. The coolest experience was I said it to David on Twitter, I think, was when we had that community call in the small private room, and first
Oh, yeah.
there were only 3 people in there, I think, and then people kept coming in, and there was 20 people from the core community. Yeah, all the stuff, all the people I wanted to meet, and that was just such a cool experience. The vibe in there was so great. Everyone cheering. It's just so much nicer than I knew. There are 500 people online, but having those 20 in the room was such a cool experience, I think.
That's amazing. And Scott Duro is such a nice guy. We had him as one of our first guests, if I remember correctly. It feels like a lifetime away now, but there's only a few episodes away. You talked about UI, user interface design, and making good applications. And there's something that's interesting because people talk about, well, I don't. It's not worth my time to make an application look pretty. But there's something called aesthetic usability principle, which makes people think that the prettier an app looks, the more the UI is good looking, the more user friendly it's going to be. Do you mind talking about some of those, some of the tips you had in your workshop?
Yeah, so there's of course not just UI, but also UX, and I only say it's the same thing when I want to trigger my UX people in my company. But we didn't even get started with that. So to greatly increase usability, of course, you have to think about a lot of things starting before you build the app. Yeah, what we basically did was we told them how to use a good template file to get started, basic principles to make faster apps, which is also a key UX element. So when you don't have to wait for your apps to load and everything is faster, it's so much nicer to use it. And then we were talking about accessibility, of course, and we had so many examples, and we just kept going because we were remembering, or we just thought about so much new stuff. What is better? So, for example, we were talking about implementing a dark mode. Is some people will just like it because they love to use dark mode, and Luisa always talks about that it helps her migraine when she switches to high contrast mode. So that's not just something making the UI better, it's also an accessibility feature that will help some of your users much more than just having a cooler looking app. And in the end, we tackled some topics, building responsive apps, because that is key. You want to embed your Canvas apps everywhere, like in model-driven apps. That's my favorite as well, mixing those two together, or inside of Teams, inside of Power BI, and you need responsive apps for that. So another key concept you should master when building Canvas apps.
Awesome. And just for those of you who are listening and panicking, we're not confusing UI and UX. UI is user interface design, which is making prettier apps. UX is user experience, which is making sure that the app works in a way that's going to feel comfortable for the users, and helps encourage the right behaviors from the users. The two are The two are often confused and interchangeable, but they shouldn't be really. They should be two separate things.
UI is part of UX, but UX is so much more.
Yeah, exactly.
So Robin, you started speaking. You had mentioned that this was your first big speaking conference and all that, but you didn't just dive right in and decide, "Hey, I'm going to start speaking," and you were accepted, and bam, it just happened for you. You actually built up to it. You had mentioned that you started building or creating videos within your organization because you wanted to teach others how to use the Power Platform, and then user groups. So tell us a little bit about that journey for you on how it's kind of matured.
Well, I started with Canvas apps like probably 98% of the community Shane Young videos. Everybody starts off with Shane Young videos because they come back first on YouTube. And of course, they are also really, really good to get started. And when I was into it a little bit more, I just knew I want to do something with Power Apps as my main job. So to prepare for that. And I want to go into the advocacy route. So evangelism, helping other users out. And so I thought, because in Germany, lots of people don't like speaking English or hearing English content and are more familiar with, or just have it easier listening to German videos. So I just started creating my own videos, and I was just obsessed with, I had the idea in my head that I wanted to use a green screen. I never did that before, to cut myself out in the lower right corner of the video. I just had that idea and I wanted to get it done as somehow. So I want to experiment a little bit with video recording, do YouTube videos, and just see how that goes. And was making a few Power Platform videos, and people actually started watching them, and it was really, really crazy for me, because I didn't expect anything. And that was actually before I joined the German community. But German community is really strong. We have lots and lots of user groups and individual people doing lots of stuff. I just started doing calls on the evening with other people from the community, other German YouTubers who did Power Platform stuff. And just started message some guys from different user groups if I could speak. And they gladly accepted. Of course, I think every user group just get in touch and ask if you can speak, if you want to. Of course, attend the user group a few times before, or different user groups. And it was during COVID, so nothing was in person. So it was really, really easy to get started, actually, because there were like once a week there was a user group somewhere. So many opportunities to watch and speak.
Awesome. Yeah. And that just kind of built up your confidence, right? I think that's a great model for others in the community that want to kind of follow that same path, want to do speaking. They want to maybe start out at user groups or go to the big conferences. And so you kind of did that, built up your voice, built up your confidence. And I assume that that's kind of led to how you got to where you are now.
Yeah, I did the YouTube stuff before. I did internal speaking at my company about Power Platform before. So my confidence already was up there. But of course, everyone in the community, and I just saw it again in Dublin, everyone, 100% of the people are supportive. So don't worry about it. And even if you're too nervous in your first session, isn't that great? Doesn't matter. Just get back on and try again.
Share your passion.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Robin, well, thank you for taking time out of your day or evening. It's after midnight for Robin, everybody. So he's got a ton of love for the community to share his story. Thank you for taking time out of your evening and spending it with us.
It's always best time of the day for me after midnight. Everything is quiet. I just have the flat for my own, and no one is shouting in the background. So that's time to get creative. Was really nice chatting with you. Thanks for having me on your show.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us.
All right, everybody, it's time for us to take a look at all the amazing contributions you've been making to the community over the last week. Those blogs, articles, videos, and samples, we want to share them with you. Now, if you would like us to share your samples or articles or blogs or videos on future episodes, just be sure to hashtag them with Power Platform Connects, that little thing right there. I got it right the first time. Power Platform Connects on Twitter or LinkedIn, and we will absolutely be sure to cover all the amazing work that you're doing. Hugo, what do you got for us this week?
Well, we got a few blog posts that were submitted to us by the community, and our first one is by Mr. Keith Atherton, who's talking about Power Apps Ideas. Now, Keith has written a blog post on Power Apps Ideas. Power Apps Idea is a feature that allows you to transform examples to PowerFX formulas by really using the power of AI models. So in his blog post, Keith explains how you can use Power Apps Ideas, and he shows how to select a text control, for example, in your gallery, and then to use Power Apps Ideas to generate a formula based on the example you provide. Power Apps Ideas is great because you don't have to necessarily understand PowerFX. You give an example, and then you learn from example. So it's a great article to get started, and it's definitely a great feature that you should learn. Our next blog post is by Dennis Hudeh-Bura, and he writes about how to create a group by collapse view. So Dennis had someone who reached out to him and or reached out to the community, and they needed to create a whole bunch of libraries, something like 500 libraries, and they needed to speed things up. They wanted to use Power Automate to create all the libraries based on the list of names from a spreadsheet, and they wanted to be able to group things by a certain field. And of course, and that's the part that I appreciate is, I'm the world's laziest developer. I wouldn't want to do that by hand. So what our friend Dennis did is he actually showed in his blog post how to actually create a view, which is grouped by a specific field, and that's collapsed by default using Power Automate in a SharePoint list in SharePoint Online. Great article. Really appreciate here not having to do things manually. Again, we have another article by Mr. Keith Atherton asking ChatGPT about the Microsoft Power Platform. It's actually a cool blog post because what Keith is doing here, he's actually having a conversation with ChatGPT about the Microsoft Power Platform. In this blog post, basically, Keith is actually documenting the conversation he had, and he shows how ChatGPT is responding to things like, what is a local platform, and how does it enable organizations to build custom business applications quickly and easily. It's a great article, especially it's entertaining if you want to see how ChatGPT is responding to things. Geetha Sivasalam is writing about Dataverse shortcuts in Microsoft Fabric Lakehouse. Dataverse generates shortcuts to Microsoft Fabric, and it generates a Synapse Lakehouse and a SQL endpoint, which is a data warehouse, for your data. And that enables next generation Power BI capabilities. Now, with Synapse links for Dataverse, makers and data engineers can directly link their Dynamics 365 data in Dataverse with Microsoft Fabric. Now, for those of you who are wondering, a data lakehouse is really a data platform that allows you to merge the best aspects of data warehouse and data lakes into one data management solution. And it allows you to really take the flexible storage of unstructured data from a data lake and the management features and tools from data warehouses. And then it really strategically implements them together as a larger system. Craig White is writing about JSON and parse JSON functions. According to learned on Microsoft.com, the parse JSON function will parse a valid JSON string and return an untyped object representing a JSON structure. But sometimes you might get some errors with the parse JSON function if the text isn't valid or it doesn't meet the JSON object notation format described by the standards. So in this article, what Craig does is he talks about exactly what is JSON. He provides some good example how to use parse JSON. He shows example of PowerFX functions with examples, and then he shows really cool tips, like for example, how to get values from JSON environment variables. And he has bonus cool JSON tools that I certainly didn't know about, and I went ahead and installed all of them on my environment. Michael Migel is writing about automated repository setup for GitHub. So again, Michael loves automating manual and repetitive tasks, and I agree with him on that. And any automated process will save time and will obviously reduce opportunities for mistakes. And so, for that reason, he wanted to share this new example with us. And Michael uses Microsoft Power Platform together with AWS Cloud to create a cool solution. So, in his blog post, Michael explains why an automated repository setup is important for his end users. And he actually has replaced a manual process with all the downsides and disadvantages for the end users. But then he actually set up a automated process that reduced the errors. I think he went from basically it's something that took 5 days to something that takes minutes. Secondly, what he did is he showed his technical solution for the manual process. And so what he did is he created an API that really automated the infrastructure as a code repository setup for his new AWS accounts. And then he did this in a small solution based on cost efficient AWS serverless technologies. And he used an AWS Lambda function. And after that, he explained in his article how to use the Microsoft Power Platform to provide a simple user interface for his automated process. He created that using a Canvas app, and it was the perfect solution for him because he did this in Dataverse for Teams. And then finally, he used a custom connector and API management gateway to call his API in his AWS stack. So it was an automated repository setup that works great for him, and I hope that other people will benefit from that as well. Reshmi Auklu is talking about converting to modern YAML pipeline application lifecycle management in Azure DevOps for Power Platform. In this article, Reshmi talks about how she converts a classic pipeline to a modern pipeline in Power Platform. If you're wondering, a classic pipeline is really the original way in Azure DevOps to create pipelines using a user interface. And it was great because you had a graphic user interface editor. However, YAML is the newer way where you can really define your pipeline using code in YAML format. And then you can commit it to a repository, so in source control as well, which is great because your pipelines are stored in source control. And Azure DevOps does have an assistant that will help you create and modify the YAML pipeline. So you don't really have to remember every possible setting or keep having to look up the references. So in this post, Reshmi explains the steps to follow to convert a classic pipeline to a modern pipeline and the benefits of using the modern pipeline. I mean, the cool benefit is it's modern, so you get to say that you're being modern. Rashmi also explains how to create a new modern pipeline and how to add stages and steps to it. It's a great article, especially if you're looking into starting that transition. Craig White, again, comes back with user functions versus Office 365 users. So you have different ways of retrieving information on the current person who's logged in, especially if you do that and want to do that in the Canvas app. There's really two popular ways, right? You can use the user function or you can use the Office 365 users connector. So in this article, Craig talks about the differences between the user function and the Microsoft 365 users and Power Apps. He explains how to use the user function and how it is different from the Office 365 users, and he also explains some of the discrepancies. He also explains how to use Office 365 users to access their user profile in your organization using your Office 365 account. So it's a great example if you want to understand better how to integrate user information in your Canvas apps. Michael Magel is talking about using Azure OpenAI chat completion in business. So in this article, Michael really explains how you can use Azure OpenAI to integrate OpenAI's language and computer vision models into your own cloud applications. And the service really allows you to do high performance AI models at production scale with industry leading uptime. Azure OpenAI is used to really power several Microsoft apps and experiences, including GitHub Copilot, Power BI, and Microsoft Designer. And you can take advantage of that in your own applications. I think we've covered Craig White before. Craig White talks about converting text-based RGBA values into color. RGBA is red, green, blue, and alpha, alpha being the transparency. And in the article, Craig explains really how you can take those values into color using CSS. And the cool thing about that, it's a cool trick actually. Craig also explains how to use the RGBA values in CSS and how you can use them in different ways within your applications. Dion Taylor, our Dynamic 365 goddess, is talking about the Smart Org chart, which is in preview. So the blog post is really showing the new Smart Org chart feature that's in Dynamics 365 Sales. And the new Smart Org chart feature, try to say that 3 times fast, really completely revamps the existing org chart functionality. In fact, you can see an extract of her article here. You can actually show the organizational structure of an organization as an org chart by moving the related account contacts around, and then it helps you really visualize the hierarchy of all the people related to an account in Dynamics 365. You can enable this feature by opening the Sales Hub app and then navigating to the app settings area. You'll notice the org chart on the sitemap below the general settings section right below the LinkedIn integrator. And this is going to show you a cool window with a slider that you can set to yes to enable your new org chart. Thank you, Dion, for the cool article. And as always, Dion has added a video to her blog post. And that's it for us for this week.
All right, everybody. Well, thank you so much for tuning in this week and sharing with us the amazing work that you're doing. Now, again, if you would like us to cover some of the articles, blogs, videos, or samples that you're creating for the community, just be sure to tag them with Power Platform Connects right there. Hashtag Power Platform Connects in Twitter or LinkedIn, and we will scour them to find all the amazing work that you're doing. Now, that's not the only thing that you could do. Hugo, what else could everyone do?
You can also go to aklms/join the community to join the Power Platform community. And there you can find answers. You can help others by providing answers. And who knows, if you contribute enough answers, you might become a super user. And then, you're going to look cool because you're a super user.
No cape, though, right? No
Okay.
cape.
Well,
no cape. Maybe a cape. Whatever you want. We're
I
easy.
don't judge. Yeah.
All right. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Welcome to Power Platform Connections, where I can't even speak. Sorry.
Errors I must not do. David, you look like you need to have a nap. Only have 72 more slides.
This is going to be fun.